All right, welcome back, everyone. Super pumped for this episode. Brett Ender, man, it's a long time coming, having us both in the studio here talking on the podcast. I look up to you in so many ways, so super excited to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Man, we've been talking about this for a few months now too, right? And I've just been pumped just getting to see everything that you're doing with your meal prep service, your podcast. I think that's one of the very cool things about being in Austin is just the overall, like, just crop of talent of amazing people that are here. And I'm 30 and are you 23 or 24? Like, it's very cool for me to be able to, even though you're 6 years younger, like me admire your work ethic and like equally look up to you in ways as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot. And it's a testament to like the community we have here in Austin. People just, it's so beneficial to me because the people I run in circles with are almost all older than me.
Yes.
I'm like, this is exactly what I need. I need to look up to people. I need to see, okay, here's what life can look like in 5, 6 years, 10 years from now, if I keep down this path. So I just want to thank you, thank a guy like Harry for just being there and just being a source of inspiration. For you, you're a podcast host, you're a founder. You do so many different things and people just look up to you because of your character, your work ethic, and obviously the content and the products you put out in the world. I want to ask you, earlier in life, was there ever a moment that you were like, I am designed to be an entrepreneur, I'm designed to lead? What was that moment for you that made you step into a more meaningful purpose?
That's a good question, man. And I appreciate the kind words. I would say it's interesting because Harry and I started Meat Mafia in 2022 with no business plan. We were both just guys that were kind of our own like lab rats, where we had just done a ton of experimentation with different types of diets. I had really bad autoimmune issues that I cured going carnivore. That was kind of that founder story that helped put us on the map. But I didn't just go right into Meat Mafia. Meat Mafia was probably like a decade-long journey to lead into the point where I was ready to launch and start the business. So I graduated college 2017, played collegiate baseball first at Seton Hall, which is a D1 school in New Jersey, and then I transferred to Babson, which is a Division III school, and they're known for their entrepreneurship program. But despite the fact that they're known for their entrepreneurship program, like 99.9% of your classmates all get corporate jobs, investment banking, finance, accounting jobs, Big Four, et cetera. And I kind of found myself in a similar bucket, and I felt that I was meant to do something entrepreneurial. I just didn't know what that was. And so I almost felt like, even as a young guy, I always had this feeling. I was like, I think God has made you to do great things. I think there's a calling on your life, but I'm just going to keep doing the right things in regards to the way that I eat, the way that I train, the way that I show up for other people, work really hard and just learn from some of these older people like you're talking about. And I know that that right opportunity is going to hit me in the face. And I just pray that I'll have the courage to recognize that opportunity and then jump ship. I think that's a big thing, right? Like, I think a lot of us are born with great gut instinct. I think the harder part is listening to that gut instinct when it's, hey, I'm in this corporate job and I have this side business that I want to run. Maybe I'm making 10K from this corporate job and the side hustle is only making 2,500. I feel like I should quit to do it, but I'm really attached to that stability, right? Even though your gut is telling you one thing, like that fear and the societal pressure that really seeps in. But to directly answer your question, I remember my first job that I ever worked at was AIG, which is a huge insurance company. And in the analyst class, when I first started, they made us take a personality test, kind of just to identify like what your corporate archetype is. And so they show you your score on a chart and then they like map it next to what your archetype is. And I remember getting mine back and I think it was like a circle, and all of my traits were like on point with the entrepreneur archetype. Almost, it was like a 99 percentile. And I felt like that was almost concrete affirmation of what I was supposed to be doing. So I think that kind of put it into the back of my mind. I obviously didn't have that. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but that was almost like this affirming moment of, okay, I really think that God has a bigger calling on your life. I'm in New York City. I'm working at a big firm. Now let me just lean into all these things, go all in, and like what will that actually lead to in a couple of years? And I think the journey will be worth it.
That's so good. Going back to what you said about college, your second school, entrepreneurship program, entrepreneurship focused school, and 99% of people go and work a 9 to 5.
Yes.
It's insane to me because everybody likes the idea of entrepreneurship and business ownership. Everybody is gravitating towards that freedom, that flexibility, that I work for myself, I'm not answering to other people, it sounds great. But then when it comes down to actually starting something, building something, and not just having an idea, but taking action towards it, and things get difficult and you have to make big decisions and you deal with failure, you gravitate towards that comfort. Why do you think so many people like the idea of entrepreneurship, but then they fall back to that corporate route and say, this would be great, but I'm going to stay comfortable here?
That's a good question. I mean, even though you and I are 6 years apart, I see this a lot with like my cohort of, you know, college friends that have gone down traditional corporate paths. And a lot of them will speak to me about their entrepreneurial passions or their goals or their aspirations. And I would say 9 out of 10 probably stay there, to be honest with you. And I have a lot of sympathy for our generation. And I don't mean that in an overly sympathetic way, but it's difficult because when you're scrolling social media, the people that will probably most prominently show up on your feed are people that are, you know, posting these very viral clips, polarizing clips, et cetera, you know, the Hormozis, et cetera. They put out a lot of great content, but you're constantly brainwashing yourself with this entrepreneurial content that makes it seem like it's really attractive. And probably if you're listening to this, you have this, there might be some, you might either have an aspiration or maybe you have like a concrete idea or a vision of what you want to do. Where it gets difficult is giving up like the version 1.0 version of yourself to become the version 2.0 version of yourself. Like the mental instability of, hey, I'm giving up this salary that is guaranteed for the predictable or for the unpredictable unknown. Like, what is that going to lead to? Am I going to be able to pay my rent? Am I going to be out on the streets? Like your brain just starts, like that fear protection mechanism just starts blasting you. And I had all of those same feelings and those fears. And for me, it was living in San Diego. I was living in San Diego. Harry, who hosts the podcast with me, we had just done Ironman Waco and spent a couple months at an Airbnb in Austin. And up to that point, I had lived in New Jersey, Boston, New York City, just kind of traditional, standard Northeast guy. But at the same time, like I was telling you, I had this vision that was burning for something bigger. I just didn't know what that was, but I just felt like I wasn't meant to fit into this box. And so Harry started writing about nutrition on Twitter, and he was like, dude, you have a very compelling founder story. I really think that you're doing the world a disservice by not sharing that story. And I tried to share my founder story so many different times. I knew that there was something compelling about having ulcerative colitis and autoimmune issues and healing it holistically and getting off of all your drugs and medication. I knew that that would resonate with people because of how sick the population is. And there were 4 separate times that I can recount in New York City where I wrote that story and put so much pressure on myself, or I let the fear overwhelm me that I either like crumpled up the piece of paper, threw it, was all frustrated, deleted it off my laptop. And there was something different about that night in San Diego in January of 2022 where I had this feeling of like everything that you've been dreaming about for the last 5 years will come from you writing this. This thing might flop, it might do great. The result actually doesn't matter. It's more about you building up that almost like that identity and that affirmation of like that you're meant to actually create. And so I remember, man, like that was the first time where I didn't let this fear and this resistance overcome me. I wrote this like really long blog. It was way too long. And then at the time I had been on health Twitter, and I had been noticing at that period of time, there were a lot of threads that did really well. And so I kind of took the nuts and bolts of the blog, turned into a thread. I wrote it on Thursday night. I scheduled it for Friday at 5 a.m. PST. And I was in Soulbra. Soulbra had like this Discord community. And I was like, you know what? I'm paying for this community. I've interacted with Soulbra before. Maybe he'll see it and think it's compelling. And so I scheduled it. I posted it. And then I posted it in the Discord community. He saw it, retweeted it, and then the post did numbers. It did maybe like 200,000 impressions, and I gained like 1,000 followers organically. And so that was my and for me, and I'm sure it's similar to you, it's like once you get that sip of greatness or that sip of belief, it just makes you want to go all in and just be like, all right, now what else can I do? What if I write 5 threads a week, whatever it takes? I just needed that like first little form of belief. So I would say, I think getting that taste is huge. And I think a lot of people have never gotten that taste. So I think if there's things you can do in your own life to get that taste, that's massive. But for me, it was more so like the pain of not doing this thing overwhelmed the pain of the fear of like potentially trying something and failing. Like that was just that night in San Diego, just it completely changed my life. And thank God I had that vision, because I would probably still be in like some type of corporate sales role, still thinking about these things, man.
Yeah, that that is so good. And the difference I see in you is, number one, you take the steps to cure your ulcerative colitis naturally, and you have a great story behind that, right? And that's inspirational, and you have completely transformed your health because of that. Not only did you do that, you took the next step to create, write about it, and inspire people. And you're almost doing a disservice just falling in that first bucket of, I'm going to do this for me and stop there. You know, it's just about me. And now with you going and creating your story and telling people, here's how I did this, but also here's what I learned about health and nutrition along the way, so that even if you're not dealing with the same issues I had, here's some things that you can make yourself healthier and, you know, change your life because of these different practices and holistic ways. So for you, it's not only I am creating, but I'm inspiring people. I'm changing lives. And, you know, those 200,000 people that saw that first tweet, you might never see them face to face. You might never know the name of a person that interacted with that, but you can have the satisfaction of knowing the good word of my story is out there, and people can now be inspired, take some nuggets from it, and then change your life because of it.
That's really well said, man. And what I would say to your point, Matt, is I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You think about 200,000 people in a room, right? That's bigger than like any professional sports stadium that exists. It's overwhelming to think about that many people viewed your piece of content. I got fortunate where the healing stories on social media, they just resonate, right? Like Mari from Pursuit of Wellness is the perfect example, showing her weight loss journey, because it gives people hope, like a David Goggins, et cetera. But what most people do is most people don't have that first viral pop, and they're like, I posted this video on YouTube about this thing that I care about. It got 57 views. And then I did another video and it got 78 views. Like, my channel's not even growing. Well, it's like, number one, your channel is growing. Like, you have to love the aggregation of marginal gains that you get from one piece of content to the next. But also, if you have 48 people that are viewing Matt's video and they love Matt, they love the stuff that you're talking about, like if you put 48 people in a room, that's a lot of people, man. 100 people in a room, a lot of people. And so I think we've fallen into this trap of like, if a piece of content isn't viral, it's a failure, versus focusing on, I forget who wrote it, like that viral blog of just 1,000 true fans. It might even be 100 true fans, but if you have people that are consistently tuning in for your stuff, you're going to be able to build something pretty special on the back of that.
I agree. I got so caught up in that when I started this podcast.
100%, man.
Like, I remember the first episode, it did, for my standards, it did really well because it was new. I was sharing it with everyone. I was like, hey, this is episode 1 of something new. Check it out. And then as the episodes went on, 5, 6, 7, just went down, down, down. I remember looking at my laptop in college. I was producing content every single week, and I was like, 13 people are listening. I was like, this is crazy. Why am I doing this? But looking back on everything I've ever started or like invested in my life, this has been the most consistent and long lasting, because I don't care what the numbers are. I truly believe in the mission and the vision behind it, which is so different. Like, you can have so much more fuel and like longevity in something because of that. And then you stick it out for 3+ years, and now thousands of people are listening to each episode.
Yes.
Like, consistency over time will take care of itself. Like, you don't need to worry about that. But those dog days of, hey, nobody's watching my stuff, or if it's Instagram, YouTube, a blog, and you're seeing like a 0, you're seeing 50, you're seeing 250, and whatever number that is that seems low to you, eventually it will shake. But also, if you don't buy into it, if you don't have a vision that this is going to grow and this is going to inspire people, you're just going to burn out. That's what I see in so many people. They have these ideas, going back to the entrepreneurial journey. Like, everybody's like, I want to do all these things. But if you don't truly believe in it and you don't think it'll change lives, and you see those low numbers, you see the low sales, you're just going to give up.
Definitely. It's the same thing of, a founder that's starting a company because they think they can get a lot of funding and they can turn, $1 into $1.50, right? There's no passion, there's no soul. It might be a great business model. You might have a great operating team, versus the founder that like has unwavering belief that they'll like die before they let this business fail, because they need to have the impact that they want to have in the community. Like, I'll bet on that founder all day long. Like, even if the business plan isn't as dialed in, even if they make mistakes, even if they don't know how to allocate capital, it's like this intangible heart and soul that I think we've maybe lost a little bit of society, but I think that's coming back at the same time too. And the other tough thing about this conversation for the listener is that you and I both know that feeling so intimately of listening to a podcast like this, being inspired, being like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm not going to stop until I record 100 episodes of a podcast, or, put out 100 videos on YouTube, right? It sounds so good. And then you might even make it to like episode 15, and you're busting your ass. You're doing all this research, you're doing all the video editing, and then the views still aren't there. And that's when it gets tough. And that's what listening to something like this is so difficult, is that there just really is no cheat code to be able to bulldog that. It's like just continuing to like renew your mind, renew your spirit. And dude, it's more of like a mental and spiritual knife fight than anything else, I think.
I agree. And you've been fortunate enough to have conversations and just be in the room with a lot of high achievers, whether you are closely connected to them, interviewing them for the podcast, or just different conversations. Are there any traits you see in common between these people, whether they're creators, founders? What separates them from the general population?
It's a great question. I would say that, well, we have a health and wellness podcast. I've been pretty amazed by the number of curses or diseases or, tragic events that happen to a lot of our big guests that actually was like the catalyst to change their entire life too. And I think that's a very Christian and biblical thing, right? Like, the Lord's will is perfect. You might have this terrible card that you've been dealt, and you're like, God, why are you not showing up for me? You think God's timing is wrong, yet God's timing is typically just later, or maybe a little bit more delayed than you think, but his timing is actually perfect. And then when you play things out over the course of a long time horizon, you realize, oh, his timing was actually perfect. I just didn't see it in the moment when I was in so much pain. I think that was a very common thing. And I would also say too, something that changed my life about, we had Mark Sisson on the podcast, founder of Primal Kitchen. I would say Mark was at the top of our podcast, like, dream guest list for a really long time. We'd learned so much from Mark. He taught us about paleo. If you look at the blueprint of a 70-year-old from a relationship standpoint, business perspective, health perspective, he just checks so many of those boxes. And so we'd want to have him on the show for so long. And we finally got him on in 2023. And we had guests on that didn't even know my name or Harry's name, didn't know the name of the podcast. And he goes up to us, I didn't know him. He didn't know us from Adam. I exchanged maybe 3 DMs, and he knew both of our names. He had clearly listened to the show before. And that was a big turning point for me of, am I reflecting the prep of someone who's like truly at the top of their game? And this guy has he has every excuse in the world to have not done research, not know about me and Harry. That was a big catalyst as well too. And I would also say from a male guest perspective, just the way that some of these guys that are like really at the top of their game, they're just very polished and just show up in all these other aspects of their life. It's something that I'm very passionate about, where I'm not saying you need to wear a suit and tie into work every single day, but I think there's a balance of, I think just like the little touches of like, getting your hair cut, being well dressed, like having good hygiene. I don't know, like just first impressions do matter.
For sure.
Like this DEI culture, I think we got away from realizing that matters, and everyone is beautiful or whatever. But the fact is, like, we do subconsciously judge people. And especially if there's someone like you, someone like me, we're trying to get ourselves in the right room. Definitely our listener, I'm sure, is that archetype. If you're trying to meet someone that's, a couple decades older than you, especially if you're raising capital, right? You're probably not raising capital from someone that's your age, probably a little bit of the old guard. Dude, first impressions do matter, and take care of yourself. And also, when you take care of yourself physically, your internal machinery starts to reflect that as well too. So it's this kind of beautiful thing. And so I don't mean that in a vain way, but I've just noticed these little like touches and polish and attention to detail, and then we feel fortunate because we get to talk to these people, and it just rubs off on you, and it's inspiring.
Yeah, that's so good. I love both those points. I want to touch on both of them, but going back to God's timing, I'm glad you brought this up because it's such a powerful thing, something that people need to trust in more. Right now, Harry, myself, Dom, Drew, and a few other guys are going through Disciplines of a Godly Man.
Such
we're
a good book.
Discussing it every Monday evening, but last night we're discussing chapter 2, which is about purity in relationships. So a little bit of a different topic, but the sentence that I really honed in on remains true to what you just said. It was like, the author said, I believe that most people wouldn't stray away from God's word if they knew the good that would come from it. And so often, you know, you might have like a little bit of belief that God has a plan for you and his timing is going to be good, but then things get difficult and you give in to instant gratification, you give in to sin, or you just go down the wrong path because you're like, this isn't going to work out for me. But if we knew and completely trusted and were patient that good things were going to come and God has a plan for us, and if you stay in the word and you stay faithful to him, everything's going to work out. If you could see that painted picture at the end, life would be so much easier.
Yes.
Right. That's why Christianity is such a difficult path to go down, because you don't know what's going to come from it.
Yes.
You have to continue to pray and be faithful. But if we could just paint that picture and be like, this is the ideal version of you, it could be in 20 years, it's going to be 5 years from now, you know, the day-to-day would be so simple, because you're like, oh, I'm working towards this, easy. But it's all uncertain. You just got to continue to trust.
And that's the beauty of faith. To your point, Matt, is that's why faith is such an incredible thing, is that we unfortunately don't have that picture, and we're forced to trust in God's timing and God's vision, and maybe even in our own vision if we think that it aligns with God's vision. But I think that's such an amazing thing. Like, I think there are a lot of parallels between, you know, faith as a founder and faith in the Lord, and those things are very intimately intertwined. And that's the beauty of it, is that it is difficult and it's meant to be difficult. And when you read the New Testament, like, you know, Apostle Paul, like, he talks about how hard that is and how hard it is to, like, we're programmed to want what the flesh wants. Yet if we continue to lead down what the flesh wants, you know, food, sex, cheap dopamine, whatever, you know, the path that's going to lead to. And so he's calling us to be disciplined through the Spirit, and to not conform to the patterns of the world. But then you're like, but is it still, but like, all right, I'm going to follow God's plan for me, but is like the end still going to justify the means? And like the end might not justify the means while you're in your physical body in earth. But like the beautiful thing is that what's coming after this makes earth look like that, you know?
Yeah.
I had a pastor explain, this pastor that I love going to back in New Jersey, where I'm from, he basically said that the equivalent of following the Spirit versus the flesh on earth is essentially while you know, if you live to be 90 years old, is the equivalent of doing like a 2-week water fast, where you know that when that's done, the rest of your life you can literally eat whatever you want. So if you knew that, you'd be like, yeah, dude, I'll do the 2-week water fast. It might be hard, but it's easy. And I think it's the same thing about following the Spirit versus the flesh when we're on earth. But I think because we don't actually know what that end picture looks like, it makes it so hard for people, because they're afraid of, what if I do all the right things yet I still fail?
Oh yeah, that's so good. I love that. And then to your second point of showing up as your best self, I think this is a critical message for people that want to achieve more. They want to grow their network, get around better people, because, you know, so often we dream about meeting someone like a Mark Sisson and be like, this is a dream guest for me. I want to be in the same room as him. What if he walked through the door? Are you even prepared for that conversation? Are you ready to physically show what you have to provide? Are you able to mentally have that conversation? Sometimes you're not.
Yes.
And, you know, it seems, again, like what we just talked about with God's plan and being faithful and trusting that, you know, it's hard to go day to day and just being like, I'm preparing for something that is the unknown.
Yes.
Same thing with this, preparing for that conversation, preparing to be the best version of yourself when it matters the most is hard on a day-to-day basis, but it pays off. And if you have that vision of, hey, I want to be around these people. I mean, look at a city like Austin. You can run into someone influential anytime, any day.
Any day, man.
Like at Collective, you know, working out, walking on the treadmill, co-working, you could run into someone that's like, could literally change your life.
Yes.
A business partner, a new friend, a relationship. These are things that are surrounding us. But are we physically and mentally and spiritually showing up to entertain that conversation?
Definitely.
Most often not. You know,
Yes.
It takes that, you know, preparation on your own to make sure you're prepared. And I like what you mentioned of like preparing the physical body too, taking care of yourself, and the way you show up, the way you carry yourself does matter a lot. And if you look physically fit, you walk in with confidence, changes everything.
100%. And again, right, it's like, you're not saying this in a vain way. It's just a way of like, when you are physically fit and you're well put together and you're well dressed, it's like that showcases like confidence and self-care for yourself that I think permeates to other people, right? where if someone is dressed like a slob, they're overweight, they're out of shape, they're like, yeah, I might be talking to you about business, but if you can't take care of the most like fundamental basic things, how am I going to trust you to follow up with your word or show up on time, et cetera? And that's another thing I would say that I was just thinking about when you were asking me, hey, what are the things that you've learned about from some of the biggest podcast guests? It's they're impeccable with their word, they're super quick with follow-up, and they show up on time. And those are three things, man. Like, I thought I was always good at those things, and spinning these different plates between Meat Mafia, Noble, some of our other ventures, I was just spreading myself really thin. And I was like, oh man, dude, people are trying to text you about business. You're totally missing their messages, or you're not calling people back, or hey, your phone's always on do not disturb. And you know, an investor's trying to call you about something and you're not getting back to them. Just like these things that seem so basic that just compound to mean so much more. And they add up to be Matt's brand and Brett's brand and the listener's brand too. And so I want to control the things that I can control. I want to, you know, if I'm going to be on your podcast, I want to be here 10 minutes early. I want to be, you know, well dressed. I want to have gotten a workout in before, eat clean, so I can, you know, show respect to you and then respect for myself. And then we can have the best conversation that hopefully changes people's lives.
Yeah, that's so good. I can relate to that so much right now. This past season, really a couple years of my life, I feel like I've spread myself way too thin. It's always been like, I just want to achieve more. I'm going to just stack things on my plate. And then recently, starting meal prep service, I was like, I can't add this and be my best version. I'm doing 7 other things.
Yes.
And I spent the last 6 or 7 months here at Collective being the assistant manager. And I was like stoked to get that role. And then as time went on and I started growing into entrepreneurship, like I can't be working full time and then expect the other business to operate at a high level.
Yes.
You know, if I treat it like a side hustle, it's always going to be a side hustle. And it was crazy. Like the defining moment for me a few weeks ago was I got home after working a few nights in a row, and I noticed a pattern of 3 days in a row where my bed was unmade. And it was always like growing up and college, after college, like that was the first thing every morning, make the bed. You know, I built that habit, and that just went away because I was going to bed later than I would like to, waking up early to go train clients, do things during the day, work a shift, repeat. And the small things that were in my control were slowly falling out of my control. And I was mentally not locked in. And so I stepped away from that job recently. And people might be like, that's crazy. You quit a job because you're not making your bed, but it signals so much more to you. Because if you really want to be the best version of yourself, and things that aren't as meaningful to you are taking your time, your attention, and not making you show up as your best version, you can't have any room for that. And now this gives me an opportunity to step into business ownership and say, I'm going to work on myself just as much as I'm working on this business. Both are going to grow incongruent, and you know, we're going to change a lot because of that.
Man, I love that story. It reminds me of that classic quote. I don't even know who said it. It's like you can have anything you want as long as you're willing to pay whatever price that costs. And so when I look at what you're doing and I look at your meal prep business, and I've had the meals, dude, they're delicious. That's no BS. Like I'm going to go order, I'm going to buy 10 downstairs because I just love the convenience of something that's seed oil free, high protein. I don't have to think about it. I'm always on the road. Like just these little things that add up to be big things that make you to be the consistent man that you want to be. Meal prep is a huge thing for me. And I never had that. I didn't really have that service in Austin. I had a great service in New Jersey, but now I've got you, which is incredible.
Love that.
But when I look at what you're doing, sometimes God does smack you in the face with what you're supposed to be doing. And if I see a business like yours that's been only around for a few weeks and you're doing over 200 orders a week, I'm like, dude, I think God's kind of telling you to go all in on this thing. And I would think that this opportunity is way bigger than you being, you know, an assistant manager, a collective. As amazing that is, as grateful as you are, the people or the community that you've built up here, it's like you have to compromise on one for the other. And if you do both of those things, you'll probably be mediocre at both. And that's something that I realize a lot with myself too, is like, dude, you can keep stacking things on your plate, but at what time are you maybe are you adding more on your plate almost as an excuse because you're afraid of being as good as you really are, or like putting all your effort into 1 to 2 buckets and afraid that thing might not work out? That's something that I've done a lot of just thinking and praying about. And I think that's true.
That is so wise. And you're speaking from experience too.
Yes.
You are a founder with Noble. We got it right here. Talk about the start of creating a product, starting a business, because I'm just so intrigued by this path you and Harry went down.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I having you use it is awesome. We'll keep you loaded up. We'll keep you loaded up and get some overnight oats with the Noble chocolate. And like I said before, right, when we started Meat Mafia, no business plan, no idea what it was going to lead to. I'm similar to a lot of men when I was in my 20s of like, I've never created something. I'm literally just dying to create something versus just selling and kind of moving numbers around on a piece of paper for a company. I was just dying to just do something that was my own and try and add value. And so we started writing online. That did really well. We grew our following. We started just crushing podcast episodes. Like June of 2022, we did 35 episodes in a month. And I was working a corporate job. I think the most we ever did was 4 or 5 in one day.
Jeez.
And so I was just like making up all these fake doctor's appointments for my company to miss. They thought I was like terminally ill or something like that. But you just, again, you got to pay the price to get what you want. Mm-hmm. And we live in the world of kind of these media-driven CPG brands now, right? Where the Logan Pauls of the world are like, yeah, I could take this like great payout from a brand, or I could just own my brand because I have eyeballs that I can monetize because they followed me since I was 14 years old. That's the trend of how these brands are going, where it's like not as many deals, more media led CPG brands, right? Yeah. And I think we're just a very small example of that. And brother, all we did was we just listened to our audience because we were talking so much about meat and carnivore and regenerative agriculture. We started seeing the same theme pop up of, hey, what protein powder do you like? What supplements do you like? And we'd always prioritize real foods. You don't really need supplements. And then I was kind of doing some research behind the scenes. And I was like, when I was calculating my macros, even though I was eating 2 steaks a day, I was actually still short of my goal of getting 200 grams of protein a day. But because I had UC, my stomach doesn't tolerate most traditional protein powders, whey, et cetera. And so we just started doing some research. We started talking to some manufacturers, and we kind of came up with this nose to tail blend that encompasses everything that we believe in. So a scoop of Noble, 21 grams through beef protein, grass-fed collagen, an organ complex, colostrum, and then you're just sweetening it with stevia and then like a little bit of natural flavor. So something that's simple, super micronutrient dense, but it also is really macro friendly, where it's only 85 calories, no fat, 21 grams of protein. And then the more I was trying it, I was like, oh, this actually sits really well in my gut. Oh, like the more that I'm, if I throw in a couple scoops of Noble in the morning before I hit the gym, my pumps are better, I'm satiated, I still have a flat stomach. Oh, and I'm exceeding my protein goals. And so we came up with the first concept of Noble, just really clean, minimalist brand. We spun up a crappy Shopify website, pumped it to our audience, and then I think the first 2 days we did maybe like 20K in sales.
Wow.
But it was enough where we were like, all right, product market fit, just like you have with the meal prep company. And just like what we did writing threads, we're like, all right, we don't know anything about CPG. We're naive to a fault, and also in a way that's a blessing, because I think that helps us get over a lot of the fear hurdles that founders struggle with, the over-analysis by paralysis. And we're in Austin. We're just going to learn from all the people that we know. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to screw up. We might misspend capital, but we're going to figure this thing out. And so that was April of 2023 that we launched the Shopify website, and we've just been going at it for, April of this year will be 2 years. And it's been probably the best learning experience, the most difficult thing, and the most fun that I've ever had simultaneously.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's such a unique product. Like, I don't know many other protein powders out there that have what you guys have. Whereas you go to the vitamin shop down the road, and you just look for whey protein, you're going to spend all day in there looking at different 100%. Brands. Like, there's way too many of them. They're all the same things.
Yes.
But having a protein powder with the organ complex in there, and like for me, when I was going down the rabbit hole of like more animal-based diet and understanding micronutrients, I was like, I got on this kick where I'm like, I'm gonna eat liver every single day. I remember buying liver, and I would like cut off a small piece, and I wouldn't cook it because it would smell bad. So I would just eat it raw, put a little salt on it, eat it raw. That lasted like a few days. I was like, this is disgusting. But it's great for you, and like you feel good. But now, like, you put in a chocolate protein powder, like I could do this every single day. I do it every single morning, throw it with my coffee. But it makes it easier for people, and it's simplifying health and not having a laundry list of ingredients in something. It's like, no, we're gonna have 5 or 6 things in this. It's gonna be great for you. It's gonna fit your protein goals, and you don't need to be researching ingredients that you can't even pronounce.
Definitely. Yeah. Like I love the brand of Ghost and the way that those guys have built that brand and the outcome that they've had. And I think there are a lot of good things about the brand. And then when you look at, I think it's like their Nutter Butter protein or one of their other flavors, I remember looking at the back of the ingredients and there were like 6 or 7 different types of vegetable oil that were in there.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, your protein powder doesn't need vegetable oil to make it taste really good too. And that's why we just picked chocolate and vanilla. And there is a little bit of natural flavor. And our goal is to work those things out over time. Like there's things you can do with cacao or vanilla bean powder to make it taste really good. But something that I've changed my mind on that I firmly believe, especially when you started podcasting episode 1 versus now, the health and wellness landscape has changed so much where these early creators around, the animal-based diet, carnivore, paleo, things that have helped so many people, there's almost been an oversaturation of that content. And people are tired of some uncredentialed influencer just kind of staring at their steak in a cutting board, like yelling at you that if you're not eating regenerative meat with fruit and honey on day 1, you're doing everything wrong. And the way that I've shifted is if I can just focus on pulling these big levers every single day and every single week, I'm going to be really good. If I'm eating good quality animal protein, a gram per pound of ideal body weight, I'm going to be good. If I'm lifting heavy weights, I'll be good. If I'm walking 12,000 steps a day, I'll be good. If I cook my meals and share those meals with like friends and family, I'm going to feel amazing. And if I just do those things day in and day out over a long-term time horizon, you're going to be so healthy, feel so confident, have amazing interactions. And the minutia is great, especially if you're sick. But I think that we're living in an age of analysis by paralysis and also fear porn too. And so why we created Noble is, not to replace a steak or for a purist to try it. It's like, dude, I want my mom and sister who will probably never try grass-fed organs to be able to get more protein in and get exposure to those things. And then maybe over time they will want to try those things, but I at least want to get them introduced to those ingredients.
Yeah, that's so good. One thing I want to ask you, because I'm dealing with this right now, is when I started the meal prep service, reaching out to people, spreading the word, a lot of people are like, I want to purchase this because I want to support you.
Yeah.
I have a lot of, and it's so refreshing and like, I'm so grateful the people around me in Austin just being like, I want to purchase this because I want to support.
Yeah.
Like even your first purchase, you had no idea what to expect food wise. You're just like, Matt's doing this, I want to buy it. It's an amazing thing. And that's what a lot of business ownership is about. Like you start something, people are just like, oh, I respect this person. I'm friends with them or a family member. Let me do this. And then hopefully from there, the product sells itself and the convenience and the quality is there. So when you guys started that first day and you get 20K in sales after, launching that site, from there, obviously it's been what, a year and a half?
Year and a half. Yeah. A little over a year and a half. Yeah.
And you're now in Sun Life, you're shipping nationwide. How did you break from that? Okay, I have a small circle from people in Austin or on Twitter and they just want to support to now I want to make this at scale and spread the word. Maybe someone doesn't even know my name, but they're buying my product.
That's an amazing question. I've always had this belief that, maybe not always have had this belief, but something that I felt when we started Noble, that I'd gotten the advice that do things that don't scale. So send the one-off DMs to people, send free meals to certain influencers or creators, give out free bags to certain friends or whatever. Like these things that a like classically trained like CPG marketer would be like, no, dude, like we're just going to throw this into paid ads. Like, why are you wasting your time? It's going to take you 10 minutes to send out the order. Like we could be running paid ads and acquiring hundreds of customers a day, right? The problem is that when you do that, you're just feeding the meta algorithm and there's nothing that's keeping them coming back. It's just a product. It's not an actual brand, right? As unique as I think our formula is and your meal prep company is, it's not actually that hard to replicate. Yep. People are going to buy Noble because they feel a connection to me. They're going to buy your meal prep company because they feel a connection to Matt, in addition to having an amazing product. And so we were very bullish around, if we can just get ourselves into the right room with someone like a Khalil, the founder of Sun Life, and get him to believe in us because we're young and we're hungry. He used to be, he's still super hungry, and he was young and hungry at one point too. He has 21 locations across the country. We have confidence that we have a great product. What if we get him to buy in on us, and then we're selling Noble to all 21 locations, 10 plus of them being in California? Then we have national distribution right there too. Or even like we went to we went to a conference April of 2023, the day after we launched KetoCon. Now it's called Hack Your Health. Incredible people. Shout out Robin and Ryan. They've been huge and like being really instrumental in us launching our brand. The buyer of Central Market just happened to be at that conference, and our booth caught her eye. The packaging caught her eye. And I always thought, like, dude, there's no way we can get into a Central Market or a big retail store so early on. Like, that's going to be like years down the road. And that interaction of meeting her, she was like, hey, I'm big in animal-based nutrition. I've been wanting to carry a protein powder like this. I've never really seen anything like it. And then we just, we have a couple meetings, couple calls. Dude, 3 months later, we're in Central Market. So I hope this is answering your question, but I think it's this intangible thing around, dude, if you have confidence in yourself and you have a great product, how do I bridge the gap and connect with the people that can really help me with larger distribution?
Yep.
Like, hey, could I just like DM Jamie from Eat Clean Bro? And like, even though he's got a separate business, he's not in Texas. Is there a way we could have like a strategic partnership for meal prep? That's the way that my brain thinks for you too. And then for like having confidence around unscalable things around, I'm going to DM specific influencers. Like for a year, every follower that came into the Noble Instagram account, I would send them a personalized DM with a custom affiliate code. And most people would be like, dude, you're wasting your time doing that. Dude, it did numbers for us. And a lot of those people still purchase on subscription.
That's so good. I think a lot of it has to do with respecting the owner as well. And like, I look at you as a great example of this because you and Harry show up as amazing men, show up as your best version. You spread a good message. You have a great product. And now because of the level of respect people have for you, you have people vouching for Noble all across the world, really, because they know the people behind it. Like for me, I use it. And then every time someone talks about it, like protein powder or something, I'm just like, oh, you better check out Noble. Like this is something that just, it starts to spread and the ripple effect because people buy into the vision. And like you said, with get into the Sun Life, your selling point of being young, hungry, like I admire that. A lot of people in society admire that. It's not just like some owner of a protein powder that you have no idea who they are. It's just in the HEB down the street. This is someone who has built something very unique and you respect them. And now you're vouching for them. It permeates more. So I think that's a really good thing that you guys have going for you because you're obviously incredible men, but you show up as your best version of yourself, and that leads to creating an army around you.
Thank you, man. And I would say to your point, a good nugget in that is for people that have some type of dream or aspiration where they think they could potentially pull it off, but it maybe even feels like 1 to 2 to 3 hurdles away. That's actually a great reason why you should do that thing. Because when you do something ambitious, like start a CPG brand or start a meal prep company or lead a men's group that you don't feel super called for because you haven't read, scripture as much as you would like to, but you have a group of guys that want to lean into it, it creates almost like this proof that you're forced to step up and be that person that other people can admire and look into, man. Like there have been multiple periods around Noble where even though we're in the health and wellness space, I was breaking myself off for the business and I was realizing, okay, you might be doing good work for the business, but you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well. Like there have been multiple points where I was addicted to nicotine. I was doing like a ton of kratom. Like points where I would look in the mirror and be like, dude, I don't think that the man that you are is reflective of the brand that you're trying to portray to people. And that would just snap me back into reality too, right? Like especially now with your business being hyper localized in Austin, they're so connected to Matt that you will always be the best selling point for your product. And the people want to buy from you because you're healthy, you show up, you're put together, and you're also an amazing dude, and they trust that you're going to create a really high quality service that they can eat and draw energy from. And the second that starts to go away is when there's like skepticism around your brand. And the beautiful thing is that you have the opportunity every single day to just like keep being the man that is ideologically aligned to being the founder of this service. And that gets me so excited.
That's so good. I love that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Another question for you about business ownership. How has your relationship with the Lord impacted you as a business owner?
I mean, we probably would be defunct right now, honestly, if I didn't have it. Something that's been really humbling for me, is, I was raised Roman Catholic, never really had a relationship with the Lord, to be honest with you, even though I would go to church. I think that's a very common thing for Catholics or traditional Christians, right? Were you raised Catholic as well? And then you go to college, right?
Yep.
You just totally throw yourself. Yeah. You stop going. Your church is now, like the frat house or the baseball parties or whatever, throw yourself into all those hedonistic things. That kind of transitions into whatever you're supposed to be doing after you graduate. And then typically your God becomes like success, money, etc. And so I always wrestled with, how do I balance being ambitious, yet also being called to be like a servant of the Lord? That was something that I really struggled with, even when I decided to get rebaptized in 2023. I was like, can I be Christian and love the Lord and also be like ambitious and want to do great things? And my answer to that, based on like just the prayer and the men that I look up to that I've spoken to, is you absolutely can, but it's based on like the heart posture of why you want those things, right? Do you like being able to sell a business, right? If you're selling a business, that means that you've impacted a bunch of customers, you've made them healthier, and then in reward, someone wants to acquire your brand, and God willing, you could potentially make like generational changing money. And with that money, you can provide for your family, you could pass it off, you could donate to charities. Like there's a lot of good that you can do, and also just prove that you're leading up to the potential that God has given you. And so I have to fight myself every day because, I do have ambition, and I also do have an ego, and I get sensitive, and I get, offended really easily. So for me, my answer is like, I have to keep getting back into the word every single day and just like keep cracking the stick, like keep, on myself. Otherwise, if I don't do that, my default, like the way that God has made us for whatever reason, he kind of made us to be like beautifully broken. And I'm just going to keep, if I don't renew my mind, I'm just going to keep drifting off to these things that aren't going to ultimately make me happy. And then there's also the balance of like, regardless of how much you're going to fall on your face or whether this company sells or doesn't sell, God is not going to love you any less.
Yeah.
It's like Christ paid the price for that. And that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you go and you piss your whole life away and then you get forgiven at the end of it. But we're called to do good because of the good that, like the perfect good that Christ and the Lord has done for us. And so the shortest answer I would say to your question is it's just keeping me really humble. It's given me incredible faith. It's helped take some of this like performative self-love away from myself too. Like he's kind of like taken that burden for me. And now the thing that I try to figure out is, how do we build a business in a godly way? And, maybe we do things that, the secular business owner would say, oh, that's a no-brainer for your bottom line. But it doesn't, it doesn't align with our values.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process.
I love that. Have you ever set core values for yourself or business?
Oh, it's such a good question, man. I would say I've had conversations and I've thought through my vision and things like that. But I don't think I've been as intentional with it as I should be. It sounds like you have.
Yeah. And I hear you talking about these things, and it's a recurring theme of like, these things are important to me. And the thing I love about you and Harry is you guys are so aligned on a ton. So I would just encourage you guys to come together and find like 3 things that these are going to guide decision-making for us. These are going to remind us every day why we're doing what we're doing. And I just like how faith is at the forefront of both of you guys. It's not just all about business and money and sales. It's like, we're doing this for a reason. And, if whatever win or struggle, it goes back to the Lord. And like, this is what keeps us grounded and humble. So I think that's the first one you guys got there right there.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. No, we'll do that. And we'll send you a screenshot of it too when we come up with that. But it's such a good point because, dude, things change so much month over month, year after year. You might have this amazing vision, but if you don't have those concrete values, you're going to deviate from that, man. It's something like you're saying, you can always go back to it when things get difficult, when ego gets in the way, when success gets in the way. It's like, no, we don't deviate from this regardless of what's happening.
It changes everything. Like I went through a practice with a mentor around this time last year, and we went through, so she provided me a list of like 100 different words that could be a core value. And like, that was my homework to think on it. And I was like looking through, I'm like, there's like 65% of these that I'm like, yep, I resonate with this. Yeah. And she's like, we're going to do a maximum of 3. I was like, you're crazy. How are we going from 65 to 3? But then you see how things are all intertwined together. And one that I came up with, or we came up together with, was connection. And it's not just about a relationship with a woman. It's about, networking and leadership and with the workplace and just every connection in your life. And you create some little systemized standards behind it. It's like, here's exactly what I look for in a partner. Here's what I look for in the people I work with, the people that I serve as clients. Like, this is the connection that I want. Like, how am I going to show up as my best self to meet people in a networking space? Now that guides me of, if I meet someone new, your brain kind of just qualifies that person. It's like, okay, here's my standards. Is this person going to match up with it? Or is it like, I shouldn't invest too much time into this relationship?
Yes.
It makes life so much easier.
Yes.
And now you can, like you said, fall back on something and say, are these my core values? If they are, that decision is already made.
I love that core value of connection too. Because if you're connecting with someone, I interpret that as like, if I'm connecting with you, I'm really listening to you, you're really listening to me. I'm trying to figure out how I can serve you and be useful to you, and vice versa. And so I think if you go into it with that mentality, everything you do, every person you interact with, whether it's someone romantically, a friend, a family member, someone you work with, it's going to be so much deeper. And then it's a great filtering process, where if you feel like that connection is not there back, you're like, well, I'm probably not going to go out of my way if this person wants to grab coffee with me or do whatever, because I want to give my time to people that I truly feel value that and feel that connection to me as well too.
100%. And speaking of connection, recently engaged.
Yes.
Let's talk about, that whole process of finding a woman that fits your standards and someone you want to spend the rest of your life with. And, what's next for you going into marriage? How are you planning on showing up as your best version for your family?
Yeah, man. Such a good, loaded question too. Yeah. So my fiance's name is Dana. We've been dating for a little over 2 years. We started dating in 2022, and I was actually living in San Diego at the time. I did that year in San Diego before I moved to Austin. I had actually met her in 2017 when I first moved to New York City, because we were in a similar friend group. And I always thought there was something really special about her, but the timing it didn't make sense at the time. And again, it goes back to God's timing not being predictable, right? We just happened to reconnect in the middle of COVID when I'm living out in California. And at that time, I was like, I've been interested in this woman for a while, but I'm kind of terrified about doing long distance. I'd been in a long distance relationship before. It didn't work out. And just all the rational fears and insecurities. And my brain just has a natural pattern to like overthink and think 1,000 steps down the road versus just being in the moment.
Yep.
And then she came out to visit a few times. I had visited her. And that was a very concrete moment of like, brother, the Lord has given you the best woman that you've ever met. You can fall into this trap of thinking you shouldn't be a long distance relationship, or again, you can like have faith and go for it. And at worst, I think that you'll get some pretty amazing experiences and you'll grow a lot as a man along the way. And then something too about Dana that's always stuck out is the first date we ever went on in New York City. She had expressed to me that, she knows the Lord really well. Her parents know the Lord really well. They're extremely involved in their church, and that it was very important for her to have a man that could almost like also be equally yoked spiritually. And at that point in 2022, I was starting to go back to some non-denominational churches, but I was like kind of dipping my toe in, and like realistically, in terms of the way that I was living my life, the decisions that I was making, I was not on her level. And that was something that I've always really respected and loved and admired about her, is her just honestly expressing what she looked for in a man. And again, it made me have to cross that hurdle to meet her needs and be the caliber of men that she ultimately deserved too. And there have been there's some pretty amazing like blessings in disguise of a long distance relationship. We've been doing distance for about 2 years. Like knowing that we're going to be, going up to the altar together in June, like this feeling of like pride and admiration of like the effort that we've put into this. Like she did the calculations, like the amount of miles that we've flown back and forth from Jersey to Texas. There's like we could have like wrapped the world a certain number of times because of how many miles we've spent visiting each other. And I don't know, man. I think a lot of relationships are too easy. Like it feels good to fight for something, man. Yeah. Like when we get married and we're 20 years down the road, like you're still going to be fighting for that relationship to show up and be the best version of yourself for her. And so, yeah, man, there's so many things about her that I just love and admire so much. And there's so many moments where I'm like, dude, I don't know, like the Lord has really done a solid for you, because I don't know how you deserve this woman. And I remember thinking that relationships and like business success were mutually exclusive, where you either have one or the other and there's a compromise. And I would say my mindset now, knowing that I'm going to be getting married in a few months, is that I couldn't disagree less with that statement that I used to hold, that I actually don't think a man will reach his full potential until he finds that woman that he's meant to spend the rest of his life with.
Agreed.
And even just like, dude, I'm not married yet, don't have kids yet, but even after just like putting the ring on her finger, just the sense of focus and motivation and drive and just intentionality around the way that I've been living since November is pretty amazing. And, I'm just excited for guys like you to like find that right person, guys that are already doing so much on their own as single men. And like, once you meet that right woman, it's jet fuel, man.
I love that. It's so good. And I think a lot of men these days struggle with the complete opposite of what you're talking about.
Yes.
They struggle with commitment. They struggle with finding someone that fits their needs, their criteria. They're investing too much in hookup culture, or they're just like, you only live once, I'm going to go have fun. And, that decision to commit is prolonged. And not that there's a correct time for anything.
Yes.
Obviously, it's all God's timing. But, most people distract themselves with the worldly things of going out, partying, social media, TikTok, dating apps, and they're not actually doing the work to make them qualified to attract that person. So what advice would you give to someone mid-20s, early 30s that they're like, I don't know when that person's going to come into my life? What can they start doing now to attract that?
It's probably the biggest question you get asked from your friends, right? Is like, dude, like, how do I meet this woman? How do I meet that woman? This sounds like such cliche advice, but it's like, dude, you have to build up your own body of work that actually makes a high caliber woman interested in a man like you.
Yeah.
Right? The way that you take care of yourself physically, the way that you work on your business, the way that you have a relationship with the Lord. Like, dude, I had to go to war on myself to make myself someone worthy of a woman like Dana. You know what I mean? She, like, the reason why we met in 2022 is because I wouldn't have been ready any other period of my life. She wouldn't have been interested in the characteristics or like the boy that I was at the time. Like, she needed an actual man that could also be like spiritually and equally yoked. So like all these things sound great in practice, but if I had a clock when I can go back in time, dude, I wish I started building a relationship with God in my early 20s, because I would be way farther than I am right now. So many mistakes that I made came from self-identifying with partying and hookup culture, and it's just so like vapid and devoid, and you don't feel good afterwards, and you know that you're running from something, and God has ultimately given you the master key. You're choosing not to turn it. And so when I think about someone like you that's reading Disciplines of a Godly Man, or like a Drew, and you guys are on fire for the Lord and you're so young, I'm like, dude, where are you guys going to be by the time you're 30, right? You're going to be like sages. And then you're going to look back and be like, oh, imagine if I did this when I was 20, right? But I just think that if you continue to have tunnel vision on the things that matter in your mid-20s, dude, the right woman is going to be incredibly attracted to that. 100%. And you're going to have a woman that you look back on, you're like, I can't believe the Lord gave me this. Yeah. And I also think like you gain a lot of confidence like following your heart and what you think your God-given mission is too. That gave me a lot of confidence with Dana, where I'm like, I might not have this quality or that quality, but dude, I'm chasing my heart's calling, and I feel I have a lot of confidence in that. And I know she's never been with someone or dated someone that's just chasing what the Lord is putting on their heart. That always gave me a lot of confidence in the early days, and it still does too. Yeah. And obviously chasing your heart's calling is not easy, man. There's so many moments where, I feel like we're facing overwhelming obstacles, and I break down and say stupid crap about myself. And she's like, she knows like the perfect thing to say, like a breath of fresh air, just to give you like just unshakable confidence that I don't think you can necessarily get on your own. That only comes from like the right godly woman. But yeah, man, dude, if you go to war on yourself for an extended period of time, the right woman's going to be right around the corner.
Agreed.
In my
opinion.
Love that.
Yeah. This has been awesome. I want to wrap up with final 3 questions. First off, how do you define success?
I would define success as nothing tangible. For me, it's always just been the feeling of when my head hits the pillow at like 9, 10 o'clock at night, do I feel satisfied with the way that I showed up? Was I true to my word? Did I speak discerning truth to my friends? Did I have courage? Did I get a good workout in? Did I feel like I was trusting the process? Was I good with my nutrition? All of these things that I want to do, almost like the ideal day. If my head hits the pillow and I feel like I've checked the boxes on most of those things, it doesn't even need to be all of it, but I'm progressing the right direction. I just know that the Lord is going to work the rest out, man. For me, it's like I don't worry about anything when my head hits the pillow, and I'm really proud of that work. And then the ironic thing is that the score will typically take care of itself because you're working the process so well and you're just continuing to get better.
Yeah, so good. What is something you believe in that most people disagree with?
It's tough to articulate this, but I would say particularly for men, what I found is that I do think that you can experience like radical healing, complete shifts in your motivation, your energy, your drive. But I actually think that by like when you get close to 30 or maybe even like your late 20s, I think you're much more of a finished product than you think. And you can always make improvements. I'm not saying that you can't, but you start to hit this period in your late 20s where people stop viewing you from a standpoint of potential, and it's more so like, what are you tangibly contributing to society? And so I don't even know if this is something many people would disagree with, but I'm like, you're much closer to being a finished product than you realize. And I think working with that focus and intensity in the back of your mind is super important, because from the time I graduated college at 22 to now, it's been the snap of a finger. It's going to be even quicker to the time I'm 40 and have kids, then grandkids. Like you'll be 30 by the time you realize it, and married and all that kind of stuff. And so I think just keeping that in the back of your mind, man, that it's like, dude, it's time is going to continue to go so fast. Your characteristics and who you are as a man is more baked into you than you realize. And I think you just have to use that as motivation.
100%. I love that a lot. Last question for you. Someone that is listening to this, that they want to be successful, they're going down that path, they just don't know what direction to head in, they need some advice. What would you leave them with?
I would say, there's probably two things. Is number one, I would find if you're curious about God or spirituality or any of the things that we're talking about, being disciplined by the Spirit versus the flesh, I would try and find a really good non-denominational church or a men's group. Even if you have to go by yourself, I would just start showing up there. And you'll be pretty amazed at like what happens the more that you show up, and the way the Lord starts speaking to you, the way the worship music starts speaking to you. I think the best thing you could do is ultimately find a Christian men's group where they're actually going through the Bible. Because we've kind of weaponized Jesus, where if you had a church hurt or a poor experience when you were younger, that's not the Lord, right? That's our human misinterpretation of the Lord. But when you actually get into the Word, it's like drinking like the coolest cup of water ever, dude. It's just like this renewing and this refreshment, and it just makes you burst out of the seams and feel. It just makes you want to be a better man and a better person. So that's more of a spiritual component. And I would say if you have any entrepreneurial aspirations, I would just start listening to the Founders Podcast by David Senra. It's the only podcast I listen to at this point consistently. And then if you have any interest in creating content, I would create 4 podcasts, 4 episodes of a podcast. It could be solo. It could be an interview. If you get to episode number 4, you're already in the top 10% of all podcasts. And at minimum, you'll get better at speaking. You'll be able to play back that game footage. You'll get confidence reaching out to guests that you want to have on the show, interviewing them. These are lifelong skill sets that apply to way more than just podcasting. And you might be surprised what comes out on the other end of it. It's what I recommend to everyone. Like if anyone like just wants to get more in the game or start something, like, dude, just start a show or whatever medium of content is speaking to you. Maybe that's writing, maybe that's recording YouTube videos. I think podcasting is a good fit for a lot of people, but find that medium that you can commit to and do like at least 4 episodes of it.
And most of this stuff is free. Like Twitter's free, everything, just start.
Yeah. All of the information, all the resources, it's out there. Like you literally have the key. You just have to turn the key.
Exactly.
And that's it.
100%. Well, before I let you go, can you plug Meat Mafia, Noble? Where can people find you?
Definitely, man. Yeah, I would say Twitter's a great place to reach me. I'm at Meat Mafia Brett on Twitter, Meat Mafia Brett on Instagram. Podcast is the Meat Mafia Podcast. We're also on Instagram and every major podcasting platform. And then the protein powder is Noble Origins, which is just nobleorigins.com. And then we're in Sun Life, Central Market, but online is probably the easiest place to reach us.
Let's go. Brett, Absolute pleasure, man. This was an awesome conversation. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for having me on.